What's up, everybody? On today's show, Les Miles filing a lawsuit against LSU. Vacated wins. We will discuss the latest. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we'll discuss that Les Miles story. We'll get to an SEC recruiting roundup, and we'll get to a list of the top 5 college football SEC Heisman Trophy contenders. I'll give you a hint. They're all quarterbacks. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. So we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. In this episode, brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, new potential hires can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helping you find the right people faster and for free. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. All right, let's dive into it as this story came out yesterday. Les Miles, a name we hadn't heard in a couple of years. Of course, the longtime LSU head coach. He has not coached in college football since that 2020 season at Kansas. And his last season at LSU came all the way back in 2016, when obviously was let go mid-season. Things were not going his way. But the former head coach is filing a lawsuit against the LSU Tigers and others over 37 wins that were vacated as a result of an NCAA investigation. Now, the reasoning behind the lawsuit is simple. Those 37 wins that were vacated from Les Miles, well, his career record dropped his overall win-loss percentage below 600. And you need that to qualify for the College Football Hall of Fame. So Les Miles' career record officially listed at 108 and 73, I believe. And that is a winning percentage of 596. The lawsuit is looking to reestablish Les Miles' true career win-loss record at 143 and 73, and that would be a winning percentage of 665. Now, in a statement shared by Miles' agent, George Bass, he called LSU's actions particularly disappointing when compared to other instances of institutional disloyalty. George Bass claims LSU promised to help undo this injustice, but is basically saying they haven't done anything. You know, they said they were going to do something, and they haven't done it to help us out here. They went on to say, or the statement went on to say, Les clearly earned the right to appear on the Hall of Fame ballot, and LSU's wanton action depriving Les of that opportunity inexplicably sacrificed Les in exchange for protecting those who put LSU in its compromised position. For all those who helped make LSU football so successful, this action is a slap in the face. It reflects a disregard for the entire program's hard work and dedication. Look, I'll say this. I mean, Les Miles was definitely one of the more winningest coaches of the last 20 years, right? I mean, he had the unenviable task of having to replace Nick Saban at LSU when, Nick Saban was just 2 years removed from winning the first championship at LSU in 50 years. And it was a gamble of a hire. I remember at the time, a lot of LSU fans wanted Steve Spurrier and other names, and Skip Bertman, who was the athletic director at the time at LSU, went and got Les Miles from Oklahoma State. And a real quirky guy, a guy who, pronounced the Razorbacks as Arkansas. But the guy was a winner. I mean, you look at his seasons at LSU, stepped right in, 3 straight seasons of 11-2, 11-2, 12-2, including winning the national championship in 2007. He then went 8-5, 9-4, 11-2, and then 13-1 in 2011. Of course, got back to the national championship, but had the unfortunate rematch against Alabama and Nick Saban after winning the quote-unquote game of the century earlier that year. They offense bogged down in the national championship, and they couldn't do much. But, I mean, almost every season Les had at LSU was really, really good and raised the standard of what and continued the success of what Saban had created there at LSU. Now, an unfortunate incident. What we go back to, why were these wins vacated? Well, in 2013, LSU requested the law firm Taylor Porter conduct an investigation into Les Miles's relationships with female students and things like that. And that kind of, all this stuff kind of came out later, and this kind of turned a lot of people off on Les Miles. But the real reason the wins were vacated was in June of 2023. The NCAA announced they would vacate those wins. It was part of a punishment stemming from a scandal involving all SEC o-lineman and NFL player Vidal Alexander. Alexander's dad received a payment of $180,000 in funds from an LSU booster that was later have found to have been embezzled from a children's hospital in Baton Rouge. Now, whether Les Miles knew about it or encouraged it, whatever, Vidal Alexander was retroactively ruled ineligible, and as a result, knocked Les Miles off of the College Football Hall of Fame. I just think in this day and age where, and I get it, he's being held to a different standard where rules were different at a different time, but we're seeing an age where Reggie Bush is getting his Heisman Trophy back, right? Like, we're correcting some of the wrongs of the past because NIL is now legal, and we're looking kind of back at, okay, like, this is kind of stupid. Let me just say for the record, I think vacating wins is stupid. I think it doesn't do anything to change, like, we have memories of the wins, like Reggie Bush winning the Heisman. We saw it happen. Reggie Bush was the most electrifying player in college football. Okay, so his family may have gotten a free house or whatever, like at USC. That's nothing to do with what happened on the football field. On the football field, Reggie Bush was the most exciting player. On the football field, Les Miles beat Ole Miss. He beat Auburn. He beat these teams he played. We saw the wins. We either were there in Tiger Stadium, we were watching on TV, whatever. Like, so the NCAA going back and retroactively vacating them, and this part of a deal where, an SEC or an LSU lineman was paid by a booster. Like, I get he's the head of the program and it falls back on him, but taking away wins over, like, was Vidal Alexander, can you say absolutely 100% he helped LSU to all those victories under Les Miles because he got a payment from a booster? Again, I'm not defending the action. It was a violation, but like, it should be slap on the wrist, lose a scholarship or two, whatever. Not, we're going to take away Les Miles' victories. Again, just I think it's a silly thing, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's the only punishment the NCAA can really do outside of, giving like the SMU the death penalty. Like, vacating wins, no one cares. No one cares. No one even remembers half the time when they go, we're vacating wins. Okay, so like John Calipari vacating wins from Memphis. Okay, we saw him play Kansas in the championship. Who cares? Who cares if you take those off his record? The other thing that this kind of ties into SEC related is Mike Leach. There's been a lot of topic about, Mike Leach being one of the truly innovative figures in college football's history, and his win-loss percentage is at 59.6%. And it's kind of this tough, like, standard that the College Football Hall of Fame has held themselves to, is you got to have a 600 winning percentage. And, Mike Leach won 59.6% of his games, and you got to have at least 60% to be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. Lincoln Riley took to social media and said, Mike Leach impacted the game in a way few ever will. He absolutely deserves to be in. Honestly, tough to imagine the College Football Hall of Fame without him. I agree. I think a pass should be given here for Mike Leach. And I also think retroactively, the NCAA should unvacate the wins for Les Miles. His record is what it is. He won 145 football games. Whether he violated something or not because of a booster, like, I'd still just think, and I say this for all cases. I say this for anybody. If this happened to Nick Saban, if this happened to any college football coach, and it came out that a booster paid somebody or whatever, like, the wins are the wins. So going back and taking them out after the fact because, an investigation found this, I just think it's kind of silly. But it does bring up an interesting point, right? I mean, we agree. We think Mike Leach, his system, they had Texas Tech, and then, of course, Washington State and Mississippi State. Like, it was an incredible offense. And so many of his disciples, people have come out of that tree and have had great success. I think we say Mike Leach absolutely innovated the game. I think for Les Miles, a lot of LSU fans will say he set the game back with his lack of evolution on offense. Always had strong offensive lines, always had great running backs, whether it was Leonard Fournette, Darius Geis, whatever. But I think you're always going to look back at that season with Jordan Jefferson where he was throwing for like 80 yards a game, and the lack of quarterbacks. And then look at how LSU has evolved since post Les Miles. They've had 2 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks in Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels. Never thought we would see that at LSU going back 20 years ago. So again, is Les Miles a college football Hall of Famer? I always say this when it comes to Hall of Fame. If I got to think about it, the answer is probably no. If my instant reaction is yes, absolutely, I think Hall of Famer. And with Mike Leach, I think I lean towards absolutely because of his innovation and what he brought. Les Miles, it's a tough one. And again, even if he gets these wins vacated and gets the over 60% win percentage, the question is, can you tell the story of the SEC of the last 25 years without including Les Miles? Or college football, really, is what I meant to say. Can you tell the story of college football the last 25 years without including Les Miles? I think it's hard to do. I think because he's a guy who got to 2 different championships, won one, and kept that success going with, post Nick Saban, and obviously had some big bowl wins, won a Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame and Brady Quinn, and, so on and so forth. So, but again, is he a college football Hall of Famer? I think that's up for debate. We'll see if he ends up winning this lawsuit against LSU, and we'll see if the NCAA at all decides to vacate the wins. But it sounds like they're not dead set on it. But again, in this day and age of giving Reggie Bush's Heisman Trophy back and all this kind of stuff, I wonder if we can get past the silliness of saying your wins are vacated, erased from history. No, we remember them. We saw them. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll do an SEC recruiting roundup. That's coming your way here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys this episode presented to you by friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs have all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional, and that's on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats these days, you might not have the time or resources to hire. Go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Going along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out. Later this week, you want to check out our player series continues as we have on players from around the SEC, previewing or looking ahead to the upcoming season. And Jason Jones, defensive lineman from the Auburn Tigers, is going to join us. So make sure you guys check out that conversation as really good dude who expecting a big year over there at Auburn. So we will discuss that later in the week with him. And hey, for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming for you on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, we got to get into it. A little bit of recruiting tidbit news as we're talking a lot of recruiting, and we'll do a recruiting show here very soon with our buddy Brian Smith to catch up with him. But let's dive into a little bit of recruiting tidbits from around the conference. And we start over at Mississippi State as former Oklahoma defensive lineman Cavante Henry committed to Mississippi State out of the transfer portal. He spent last season with Cerritos College after 1 year with the Oklahoma Sooners, but he returns back to the Power 5 in the SEC, going to play for Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State. He was in the class of 2022, was a 4-star recruit out of Los Angeles. He was the number 21 overall prospect, the number 27 edge rusher in that class, and the number 262 overall prospect. So it's good talent that Mississippi State is getting there. And I keep saying, if you're a Mississippi State fan, you're going to need a program at game one to get to know your roster, because there's a lot of new faces and a lot of new names. And you're going, who's 78? Who's 84? It's a lot of new guys. But Jeff Lebby, I like his head coach. It's going to take him a little time, but I think he's going to build something there at Mississippi State. We'll see. Over at Missouri, on the recruiting front, they continue to do their thing, putting together a strong class for 2025. On Friday evening, they added a 4-star commitment in Jamarion Morrow, 5'9", 180-pound athlete, committing to Eli Drinkwitz, had offers from Georgia, Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas. Create a 4-star recruit, the number 9 athlete in the cycle for on the 24/7 Sports Composite. He's also the number 5 player out of the state of Tennessee, and gives Mizzou 10 pledges for their class of 2025. He's the 5th player that is at least a 4-star, and again, adds to the mix with an athlete. We'll see what position he ends up playing there at Mizzou, but kind of small, 5'9". We'll see what position he plays there. All right, over at Alabama, Kalen DeBoer picking up another commitment on Sunday evening for the class of 2025. This one, a 3-star defensive lineman, London Simmons, had offers from Florida State, Arkansas, and others. And 6'3", 295-pound D lineman choosing the Crimson Tide. And he's the number 67 defensive lineman, the number 15 player from the state of Mississippi in the class of 2025. Attends high school in Flowood, Mississippi. And that gives Alabama now 15 commitments for their class of 2025. Second D lineman to join this group, joining 4-star Antonio Coleman. And 24/7's got Alabama's class sitting at number 3 currently. So Kalen DeBoer answering a lot of questions of, can he recruit? He's doing so. Over at Auburn, they picked up an in-state recruit, 4-star safety prospect Eric Winters, beating out the likes of Miami, Tennessee, and Georgia. 6'2", 205 safety from Enterprise, Alabama, choosing the Auburn Tigers, tweeting out a message through Hayes Fawcett saying, "Why not Auburn?" And a big win for Hugh Freeze in Auburn. He's the number 65 overall player, the number 7 safety in the country, the number 5 player from the state of Alabama. And his decision comes following an official visit to Georgia last weekend. So kind of interesting. A lot of guys, they go visit Georgia and they come out and they commit to Georgia. But this kid committed to Auburn, and we'll see what the 4-star safety Eric Winters looks like down the road. And big pickup there for Auburn in the recruiting world. Over at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss continue to work very diligently through the transfer portal, but also through recruiting. And 4-star defensive lineman Andrew Maddox committed to Ole Miss. He's a 6'4", 280-pound D lineman from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and offers from Georgia, LSU, Auburn, and others. So big in-state win for Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels. Like we said, 6'3", 265, the number 7 player from state of Mississippi in the class of 2025. And that class continues to trend. Ole Miss, I think, with 12 commitments now for this cycle. Rebels no longer an afterthought in the world of college football. Paul Feinbaum, though, putting on the pressure. I don't know if you guys saw, he said the other day it would be an utter disaster if Ole Miss did not get to the college football playoff this year. It's a lot of pressure on Lane, but hey, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Time for Lane Kiffin to step it up. A couple other tidbits, recruits looking ahead to the class of 2026. How about Texas adding a 5-star quarterback to their class of 2026, Dia Bell? Or is it Dia? D-I-A. We'll go with Dia Bell. He is a prized quarterback out of South Florida, committed to Sark and the Longhorns, posting on social media. He is listed 6'2", 195 pounds, rated a 5-star, the 24/7 Sports Composite, the number 1 player out of state of Florida for 2026, the number 2 quarterback and the number 10 prospect overall in that class. So again, this won't be this next coming recruiting class. This is for a year later in 2026, but Sark doing a good job on offense there with the Longhorns and attracting some big names. And now he's got one of the top quarterbacks in the country for 2026. Also, looking ahead to 2026, Florida picking up a commitment from 2026 corner Jaelen Waters. He's 6'2", 170 pounds, was originally committed to Florida State, gave a verbal pledge to the Seminoles back in April, but left the class a little over a month later, and previously told recruiting outlets that Florida was his top school, took an unofficial visit to campus earlier this week, and pulled the trigger over the weekend. So Jaelen Waters had offers from Auburn, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and others. 4-star recruit, ranked as the number 15 corner in this class of 2026, number 34 prospect from the state of Florida, and number 192 overall in the national player rankings. So, again, this is not for next year. This is for class of 2026, but good additions there for those guys. And there you have it. You are all caught up on the latest in the recruiting world. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll get to that top 5 college football Heisman Trophy contenders list, and we'll tell you what On 3 Sports had to say about it. That's coming your way here in just a second. First, I'll remind you guys, as we always do, about our friends at FanDuel, and summertime means baseball. Of course, the NBA Finals wrapping up and more, and you can bet on all of the action over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from whatever it is. Who's going to hit the next home run for your team? Who's going to cover the over-under tonight in the, Mets-Padres game? Whatever it is, they got it up there for you. More importantly, they got some early college football lines as well. I was just looking at some of their week 1 lines, and if you like LSU, minus the 6.5 against USC, you can get on that on FanDuel. They got it all up there for you, especially, Georgia, minus 21 against Clemson. If you like Clemson to cover that, you can get it on that line as well. Find them all over at FanDuel.com, all the early college football action there for you. And again, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list with FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. All right, continue on here on Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. And before we get out of here, did want to mention, saw a piece over at On 3 where they ranked the top 5 Heisman Trophy candidates in the SEC this year. And obviously, look, when we talk about the Heisman, it's usually always a quarterback award now. I mean, that's really what it's become. Gone are the days of, who were the last couple wide receivers? Devontae Smith won it, obviously, at Alabama, but he was just an absolute freak. But it's tough for those kind of guys to win it. And running back, you really got to be special, and you got to go off. And a lot of people have been saying, okay, maybe Quinshon Judkins coming over from Ole Miss to Ohio State, if he has a monster year, he could be in the running. But when it comes to the SEC and quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels just won it at LSU. He's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Prior to that was Caleb Williams. So, who in the SEC quarterback-wise has a chance to really grab the bull by the horns and be that guy? Well, On 3 Sports, they've listed their top 5 Heisman Trophy contenders for this year. This is from Jesse Simonton. And coming in at number 5, he's got Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee. A lot of people expecting big things out of him. We do have to consider he has only played one college game so far, or one college game of any substance in the bowl win over Iowa. It was a big one, but don't want to put the cart before the horse. Let's see how he does as a full-time starter first at Tennessee. Let's see him go, win some SEC games on the road and how he performs, but certainly in the conversation. Coming in at number 4 on the list, it is Jackson Dart, and high hopes for him at Ole Miss. And of course, a lot of people know that Jackson Dart in the Lane Kiffin system, he's going to put up a lot of points, going to put up a lot of yards, going to score a lot of points. So Jackson Dart makes a lot of sense. I would actually have him a little bit higher on this list because of Ole Miss's softer schedule. I think they got a chance to rack up a ton of wins and a ton of yards and a ton of points. And I think Jackson Dart will likely be a Heisman invitee if all goes well for Ole Miss this season. Coming in at number 3 on this list, it is Jalen Milroe. Can't argue with that. Jalen Milroe took a big leap as last year went along, got better as the year went along, and unfortunate playoff loss to Michigan, but, won the SEC championship game, beating Georgia, and now he gets Kalen DeBoer as his head coach, and a lot of people think that this offensive-friendly system, that the sky's the limit for Jalen Milroe. So, Yeah, I think it's right. I think Jaelen can have a big showing this year, and I think could be in the Heisman conversation. But what's Alabama's win-loss record? That's the question. If they're 9-3, is he in the conversation? Now, look, Jaden Daniels was so next level last year at LSU. Even with the losses, people were able to say, well, the defense sucks so bad, but Jaden Daniels was special, so he belongs, should win the Heisman. So we'll certainly see what happens with that with Alabama. Coming in number 2 on their list, they've got Quinn Ewers. I'm less high on Quinn Ewers. I still think, look, he won the Alabama game last year, and he gets a lot of credit for that one, winning on the road in Tuscaloosa. But now you got to play an entire SEC schedule. It's not like you just get the one game against Alabama and go, oh, see, we won that one. We're going to run the SEC now. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to go play at high level week in and week out. And Quinn Ewers' 2 other biggest games last year against Oklahoma, he threw 2 early interceptions and rallied the troops late, but still lost the game. And it's been a one-sided rivalry for much of the last 20 years between Texas and Oklahoma. And then the other big game, I was there in person in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl, where he didn't play very well against Washington. Turned it on late in the final minutes, but it was too little too late at that point. So look, he loses his entire receiving corps. They rebuild it through the portal. Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden. I think they're going to score some points. I wonder about the big C word, chemistry. And we know Sark is a good offensive mind, but we'll see if Quinn Ewers can win the games he needs to. I mean, he's going to have to beat Georgia. He's going to have to win a lot of these big games to be in that Heisman conversation. Coming in at number 1, it's it's no surprise. It's Georgia, and it's Carson Beck. Carson Beck has been, he was very good last year. I thought he got better as the year went along. Last summer, he got an early Heisman bet in on him last summer at the sports book, but it was a year too early. And again, high hopes for Carson Beck. A lot of people expect, with all the talent that Georgia's got, bringing back their same coaching staff and all the continuity that they bring back. You add Trevor Etienne to the backfield, and that offense is going to score a lot of points. And Georgia is loaded and came this close to playing for a three-peat last year. Didn't get it. Just got left out of the playoff with the SEC championship loss to Alabama. But yeah, I think Carson Beck is going to come back as a man on a mission this year and see what he's able to do. But I like the list. I just would have flipped things around a little bit. Like I said, I would have Carson Beck 1. I would probably have either Jalen Miller or Jackson Dart 2 or 3, however you want to mix them up. And then I have Quinn Ewers 4th and Nico 5. It's not disrespect to Texas. There's a lot of bravado on the Texas fan part of, we're just going to come into the SEC and run roughshod. It's not an easy league to win. This isn't Kansas and Baylor. I mean, this is a tougher schedule, although they did get a weaker draw than Oklahoma got, but still going to be a tough schedule for the Longhorns. There you have it. That is this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out. And hey, for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Also available on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Check that out. Locked On Sports Today. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for watching, and subscribe on YouTube. Just about to hit 6,000 subscribers there. And then, of course, the podcast audio version doing very well as well. Appreciate you guys for listening. And we'll talk to you guys throughout the week. Check us out.